Happy Friday. Happy Friday, everyone. What's going on? How you doing, Logan? Who's here? Type in the chat if you're here. Say hi. We'll get going in a second. This document's funny. This is one of those documents they throw out there to be like, yeah, we care. We care about the origins of COVID-19. We really do. We wrote this document because we care. Who is here? All right, so let's check it out. Let's check it out. So here is the document. It's from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the National Intelligence Council. So all of our lovely intelligence folks are behind this one. They spent not very much time on this document, I don't think. This was a little afterthought project is what it feels like. So let's check it out. So you scroll down and they have the old coronavirus overlaid on a map of the entire world. And it's the updated assessment on COVID-19 origins. Declassified. Declassified, as it says in the file name. Ooh. So let's do a little read through of this. This is fun. So, updated assessment on COVID-19 origins. Key takeaways. Scope note. This assessment responds to the president's request. Now, the president requested this, that the intelligence community, also known as IC in this document, update its previous judgments on the origins of COVID-19. Update its previous judgments on the origins of COVID-19. We need an update. What do you think about COVID now? Okay. It also identifies areas for possible additional research. Annexes include a lexicon, additional details on methodology, and comments from outside experts. This assessment is based on information through August of 2021. The intelligence community assesses that SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, probably emerged and infected humans through an initial small-scale exposure that occurred no later than November 2019, with the first known cluster of COVID-19 cases arising in Wuhan, China, in December 2019. In addition, the intelligence community was able to reach broad agreement on several other key issues. We judge the virus was not developed as a biological weapon. Oh, interesting. Of course not. Most agencies also assess with low confidence that SARS-CoV-2 probably was not genetically engineered, probably. However, 2 agencies believe there was not sufficient evidence to make an assessment either way. Of course, they would do that. Finally, the intelligence community assesses China's officials did not have foreknowledge of the virus before the initial outbreak of COVID-19 emerged. All right. So we can blame China without really blaming China. After examining all available intelligence reporting and other information, though, the intelligence community remains divided on the most likely origin of COVID-19. All agencies assess that 2 hypotheses are plausible: natural exposure, or the natural origin theory, to an infected animal, and a laboratory-associated incident. 4 intelligence community elements and the National Intelligence Council assess with low confidence that the initial SARS-CoV-2 infection was most likely caused by natural exposure to an animal infected with it or a close progenitor virus, a virus that probably would be more than 99% similar to SARS-CoV-2. These analysts give weight to China's officials' lack of knowledge, the numerous vectors for natural exposure, and other factors. 1 intelligence community element assesses with moderate confidence that the first human infection with SARS-CoV-2 most likely was the result of a laboratory-associated incident, probably involving experimentation, animal handling, or sampling by the Wuhan Institute of Virology. These analysts give weight to the inherently risky nature of work on coronaviruses. Analysts at 3 intelligence community elements remain unable to coalesce around either explanation without additional information, with some analysts favoring natural origin, others a laboratory origin, and some seeing the hypotheses as equally likely. Yada, yada, yada. So no one thinks this was a bioweapon, of course. Why would they think that? And as you see, there's a header here that says National Intelligence Council. China's cooperation most likely would be needed to reach a conclusive assessment of the origins of COVID-19. Beijing, however, continues to hinder the global investigation, resist sharing information, and blame other countries, including the United States. These actions reflect in part China's government's own uncertainty about where an investigation could lead, as well as its frustration the international community is using the issue to exert political pressure on China. So basically, the United States is using this document to shit on China without explicitly blaming them for releasing this virus. Interesting how they do that. Interesting. All right, this is where it kind of gets funny. Oh boy. All right, we have a nice little image here. We have what looks like a dark hand shaking a light hand, because this is the Biden administration, I guess. First known cluster of COVID-19 cases emerged in Wuhan, China in December of 2019. I would argue that there were probably there's a lot of evidence that shows COVID was ripping through America, France, Italy, all at that time. But okay. Virus not developed as a biological weapon. All right, I hope they explain that. Virus not genetically engineered. Hope they can explain that. China's officials unaware of virus before pandemic emerged. Okay, probably. Two plausible hypotheses: natural origin or the lab theory. Evidence not strongly diagnostic of either. Well, that's for sure. China's cooperation key to understanding origins. I don't know that it is, though. Beijing's lack of cooperation on origins not diagnostic of either hypothesis. Numerous information gaps, particularly related to technical data. Okay. So this is a fun little document here. The international community, or the intelligence community, has prepared several assessments examining the origins of COVID-19. Analysts have focused on whether SARS-CoV-2, the causative virus of COVID-19, was genetically engineered, particularly as a biological weapon, was transmitted to humans naturally, or transmitted due to a laboratory-associated incident, perhaps during sampling or experimentation. China's reaction to and handling of the pandemic have given analysts insights into these issues, but Beijing's actions have also impeded the global scientific community in our ability to confidently determine how the virus infected humans. SARS-CoV-2, probably not a biological weapon. They really wanted to put that out there early. Interesting. The intelligence community assesses China did not develop SARS-CoV-2 as a biological weapon. We remain skeptical of allegations that SARS-CoV-2 was a biological weapon because they are supported by scientifically invalid claims. That's interesting. Their proponents do not have direct access to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, although you don't have to have direct access to the Wuhan Institute of Virology to theorize about that, especially since we don't know that it actually came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So there's that. Or their proponents are suspected of spreading disinformation. Blah, blah, blah. Most analysts assess SARS-CoV-2 not genetically engineered. I wonder why. Most intelligence community analysts assess with low confidence that SARS-CoV-2 is not genetically engineered. Their assessment is based on assessed with low confidence. All right, so it's low confidence. They're not super confident, but they lean towards that it wasn't genetically engineered. Okay. Two agencies believe there is not sufficient evidence to make assessment either way. Blah, blah, blah. We kind of heard that earlier. Our growing understanding of the similarities of SARS-CoV-2 to other coronaviruses in nature and the ability of beta coronaviruses, the genus to which SARS-CoV-2 belongs, to naturally recombine suggests SARS-CoV-2 was not genetically engineered. I don't know. I think that's not a strong argument. For instance, academic literature has noted that in some instances, beta coronaviruses have recombined with other viruses in nature, and that furin cleavage sites, remember that, a region in the spike protein that enhances infection, have been identified in naturally occurring coronaviruses in the same genetic location as the furin cleavage site. FCS, in SARS-CoV-2. This suggests that SARS-CoV-2, or a progenitor virus, could have acquired its FCS through natural recombination with other viruses. Now, this is very interesting because this document doesn't talk about two very, 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 very important things. They don't talk about the money that went from the NIH to the EcoHealth Alliance, which is sort of like a third party that issued the grants to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Lots of money from the NIH ended up in Wuhan, millions and millions of dollars, specifically several million for gain of function research, which, you could actually make a super virus out of a naturally occurring virus, but you would do gain of function research to give it certain properties to allow it to be more transmissible and virulent, basically. And they're also forgetting that I believe this DARPA had a project where they were looking to sort of experiment with the furin cleavage site of a coronavirus too. So there's a lot of things that are just missing. They're just, completely forgetting all the money that kind of went towards all of this experimentation. They're completely ignoring it, focusing only on Wuhan, not anything else, which makes this whole document kind of baloney. So this is where we have another little chart. Charts are fun. Say hi in the chat if you're watching. I see Logan. So closest known relatives to SARS-CoV-2 as of August, as of 2 months ago. So as of August, the closest known whole genome match to SARS-CoV-2, around 96% identical, is RATG13. We've known this for quite a while, actually. We knew this last year. A coronavirus collected from a bat in 2013 by the Wuhan Institute of Virology, according to academic literature. Scientific literature examining the genome of SARS-CoV-2 has identified at least some similarities to these other naturally occurring coronaviruses in bats and pangolins, but an immediate precursor virus strain and animal reservoir have not been identified. It's probably because, well, there isn't one. All right, so here we go. Here's a bunch of viruses. And this is how close of a match they are to SARS-CoV-2, which causes COVID-19. We found the RATG13 in 2013. That was when that one was collected. That is the closest to SARS-CoV-2. But many of these are above 90%. Most of these come from bats. Also pangolins. That's probably where the pangolin theory came from last year, because we had zero evidence whatsoever that it came from a pangolin, besides the fact that some pangolin viruses are a decent match to SARS-CoV-2. Bats are obviously the number one natural theory because bats carry a shit ton of viruses. They have a crazy immune system that allows them to hold a bunch of crazy viruses that are virulent and transmissible for other animals, but doesn't really cause much disease in bats. So a lot come from Yunnan province in China. Yunnan, and other provinces like Zhejiang down there as well. So a lot of Chinese bats, but these all seem to be Asian viruses, that whole part of the world. Moving on. What else do they have here? They go through the two plausible hypotheses of the origin. We already know that they're looking at lab theory or lab leak or natural origin. History of zoonotic pathogen emergence. Conditions in China ripe for zoonotic spillover. They really tried to blame this wet market, but they went back to that wet market, tested all the animals. All the animals tested negative. Not that you can really test. There is no real test for COVID. PCR test isn't accurate necessarily because it doesn't actually test for disease. It tests for certain properties, but it can't actually tell you if someone or an animal is sick. So of course they're trying to blame China's poor hygiene or whatever. Analysts that find the natural zoonotic spillover hypothesis the most likely explanation for the pandemic also note the wide variety of animals that are susceptible to SARS-CoV-2 infection range of scenarios to include animal trafficking, farming, sale, and rescue in China that would enable zoonotic transmission and precedent of novel human infectious disease outbreaks originating from zoonotic transmission. Novel human infectious disease outbreaks, novel meaning new. So they're saying this is a new virus, never been seen before, never been collected, never been studied. And I find that very interesting. And let's look at this little chart right here. Comparing COVID-19 pandemic to past viral zoonotic outbreaks. Now I like this one because this is bullshit. This is lots of bullshit. So on the bottom here, we have, let's go from the oldest to the newest. We have HIV-1. Which originally kind of came up in the 70s. They really identified it in 1983, HIV-1. They say it's probably from the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's not where it was first found, but like that's where you go to blame people or monkeys, at least, for a virus. They said the reservoir species where the virus is, just hangs out most of its time is in chimpanzees, because in 1999 there was a study, I think out of Japan actually, that linked the simian immunodeficiency virus SIV to HIV. The thing with this theory, it's a bad theory that it's just from chimpanzees, because the first AIDS patients were actually in America, of course, because it always feels like they're in America. Hey, what's up, vegan succubus? How you doing? I wasn't paying attention to the chat. Sorry. But this is crazy because the first cases were in 1979. 1979, I believe, was when they first really identified AIDS patients. They called it gay-related immunodeficiency disease, I believe, GRID. And these were mainly white homosexual men in New York City, San Francisco, and LA. And they started popping up in the late 70s. Very interesting that group was the group that was infected. And then a couple years later, we get AIDS popping up in West Central Africa, Haiti, and Brazil. So that's weird. And that's mainly in heterosexual people of color, Black people. So that's bizarre that we went from gay white dudes in North America, and then somehow it got to heterosexual Black people in 3 different countries. So that's weird. How did monkeys do that? And this theory, this chimpanzee theory, is very weird because it's assuming that it jumped. It was a zoonotic jump from chimpanzee to human. People think, someone probably got scratched by a chimpanzee or something, or bit by a chimpanzee, but you can't pass HIV/AIDS through scratching or biting. So we know that now. So that theory is a little weird. So this is like assuming someone had sex with a monkey or shared a needle with a monkey. Like, this is bizarre. This is a bizarre, I don't know, like ate the poop of a monkey. I'm not sure what the what their explanation is, how it jumped from chimpanzee to human. And how it spreads so fast. I mean, like HIV/AIDS blew up, but only in certain regions of the world. Very, very strange that it would come from a monkey and blow up in different parts of the world. It's not an aerosol virus like COVID, like SARS-CoV-2 is, where it just spreads through the air real quick. That makes sense. Transmissibility there makes sense. But HIV/AIDS blowing up in clusters like that, very, very bizarre. And the chimpanzee theory really doesn't hold water. Also, with the chimpanzee theory, because chimpanzees live in the jungle, you would imagine that the first AIDS patients would be in the jungle, the victims, you might want to say. And you would think that AIDS would move from the jungle to the cities, but actually AIDS started in the cities and then moved into the jungles. So that's kind of backwards. So everything about the chimpanzee theory doesn't hold any water. It really doesn't hold anything whatsoever. That theory is bizarre. What we do know is that there were experimental vaccinations, and the World Health Organization, who teamed up with the CDC for part of this experimental vaccination rollout, worked on a project in Central Africa. I mean, this project was huge. It was all over in many countries, but the CDC happened to work on a part in Central Africa, in the Congo, where they did smallpox vaccinations. These were quite experimental, and there was a huge rollout between the 60s and 70s. And they also did it in Brazil. And there just happened to be about 15,000 people from Haiti in Central Africa at that time doing some kind of missionary work or something to that effect. And they were part of the smallpox vaccination program. And then they went back to Haiti. So that's a very interesting theory, I think. How it kind of explains how it could pop up in Central Africa, in Haiti, in South America. This theory did pop up in a very prominent paper in London, I believe, around that time. It did gain mainstream buzz worldwide, but not in America, which is kind of interesting. Kind of interesting, right? And it says down here, if you can read that at the very bottom, I'm going to zoom way in. HIV is believed to have crossed from chimpanzees to humans in the 1920s. The first documented death occurred in the late 1960s. That doesn't make any sense. So you think HIV was being carried by chimpanzees in the 1920s. HIV wasn't allegedly identified, until 1983. What? So 60 years later, you're telling me it suddenly became dangerous? It was just dormant in people? There's no scientific explanation of why humans were carrying it for 60 years and didn't get sick, or 40 years at least. First death occurred in the 1960s, even though I don't really think anyone died in the 1960s. I think that's a bullshit story. I think it was more like the 70s. But maybe there was someone in the 60s. Who knows? But I don't think so, because I don't think these vaccinations were happening. But that doesn't really explain the deaths in the gay community in New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, does it? So I want to show you the theory in those cities, which a lot of people have actually pointed out. Some quacks have pointed out, but some like legitimate people who have studied this, who have been silenced, and they're just in the fringes of the internet at this point. But I watched a really great lecture from a very brilliant doctor, and he pointed this out in 1988. Shows you how they've buried this shit, which is so sad. But I'm going to show you. This sucks so much. They were actually targeting the gay community with an experimental hepatitis vaccine program. And this is why when I see experimental rollouts of vaccines, I'm like, nah, man, not for me. This is 100% why you should always be skeptical of anything that's brand new. This ad says, last chance for gay men to join the hepatitis B vaccine program, a sexually transmitted disease. Enrollment closes in June, after which the vaccine may not be available for several years. Why is that? Because this was an experimental vaccine program. Take the free blood test to determine your hepatitis B status and eligibility for the program. For hours and information, call the New York Blood Center, 570-374-3047. And at the bottom here, it says June 1979. And that was the end. That it could have happened. I mean, they could have been doing this for a year or two. Who knows how long they were even doing this. But that's funny. That lines up kind of perfectly with the first people who were sick, right? And it's interesting because the first out of the, I think it was San Francisco, the first 10 people that came down with HIV/AIDS symptoms. I mean, the definitions are all muddy even to this day, I think. But the first 10 people that they identified in San Francisco that had this, 6 out of 10 of them were part of the experimental hepatitis program. 6 of them had that experimental jab. So that's pretty alarming. It's pretty scary. I mean, there's nothing else that really explains it. I mean, bouncing from gay community to gay community within America, sure. West Africa, okay, but like Brazil, Haiti, and then not anywhere else until much later. Like, I don't know, man. And it blew up. Also, what blew up around that time, a lot of people forget because AIDS was such a big deal. HPV. HPV came out of literally nowhere. Literally nowhere. I find that very, very strange that all these things just kind of blew up in the 70s. Mainly 80s is when we discovered these things, but I don't know, man. So going back to that document, let's look at it. So yeah, HIV, and that same doctor that I was talking about who had a lecture, I should definitely put it on my channel or something. I think his name was Dr. Strecker. Brilliant guy. He like went through all of the theories and like debunked it all the mainstream theories, the chimpanzee thing. And he even predicted in 1988 that there wouldn't be an AIDS vaccine because all of these hot shots that, the Dr. Fauci's of the time, and he was a big part of this, they were all saying, yeah, we're going to get an AIDS vaccine soon. We're going to get, by 1991, by 1993, they all started making these promises about an AIDS vaccine. Fauci still talks about an AIDS vaccine to this day. He's full of shit. But this doctor in 1988, he basically said, you can't make an AIDS vaccine for this because every case is different. When doctors look at this, when they look at these cases under a microscope, we're getting different viruses. We're getting HIV-1, HIV-2, HIV-3, HIV-4, HIV-5. Like, it's not just one virus that's causing AIDS. AIDS is like a collection of different viruses, and they're all, and even within, each of those categories, they were different. They had different, they were, their code was basically different. And he came to the conclusion that these were, lab-made viruses because there was elements of bovine virus in there and sheep virus in there. And that's what people were identifying back in the 80s, that these were like hybrids. And he basically said, when you make, a hybrid virus in human tissue in the lab, it's like one of these viruses is like the mother virus and one is like the father virus. Just like if, you were to have a baby, and every virus that you come up with, every new virus that you come up with, every combo is a combination, half and half of those viruses, but it's not the same 50% each time. So you have thousands and thousands and thousands of different combinations every time it replicates in humans, and you get thousands more. So every time it spreads from person to person, you're getting thousands of new variations, sort of like the COVID variations, right, of these viruses. That's why you can't make an AIDS vaccine. And he said you can't make an AIDS vaccine because you're making it for this particular person's AIDS. So you could cure one person, but that vaccine is only going to cure that one person. So you can't make a universal vaccine for AIDS. And he predicted that in 1988. And he's right. So everything he pretty much predicted in this lecture, which I thought was brilliant, it still holds water. So that's crazy. I find that fascinating. What up, Cadillac Jack? Everybody hurts. Oh my God, everybody's gonna hurt after this fucking whatever they're gonna release next. Jesus Christ. Nipah virus. I haven't done enough research on Nipah yet. Very, very interesting though. They've been studying this in bioweapons labs all over the world. If you don't know, the Pentagon has bioweapons labs in 25 other countries outside of America because that's what we do. So that's interesting. Yeah, I need to look into this Nipah outbreak from 1999. I don't know if we were really I don't know if we were really researching Nipah that much back then. They have an actual culprit, the fruit bat, and they have an intermediary species here, the pig. They're saying that the fruit bat gave the virus possibly to a pig, and that those pigs probably on pig farms somewhere in Malaysia gave it to humans. Okay, that's plausible. It could be real. I don't know. I'll have to look into that more. Now, the first SARS outbreak in 2002 to 2004, very interesting. This was considered a novel virus. This is a new virus we hadn't seen before. But had we? Very interesting. They finally figured out in 2016, just 5 years ago, that horseshoe bats were the culprit, right? So this particular virus came from horseshoe bats. It passed possibly, I don't know why they say possibly, to civets and raccoon dogs, whatever a raccoon dog is, but definitely from horseshoe bats originally. The interesting thing about SARS is that they were doing research on SARS coronaviruses in 1999. So they had been studying SARS for 3 years. Was it this particular strain of SARS? I don't know. But it doesn't look good when you're filing patents for SARS and then 3 years later there's a SARS outbreak. I'm just saying, I feel like that was the original COVID. I think possibly because, AIDS had happened, and then anthrax. Remember anthrax was 2001? Right after 9/11, they planted this seed, anthrax. We learned that anthrax strain actually came from Fort Detrick, where a lot of these bioweapons come from. They planted that seed, though. Everyone was like, oh my God, the Twin Towers fell. A week later, they were literally sending anthrax in the mail, pretending to be Middle Eastern people or some shit, like praise Allah, like kill America or some. It was like some cheesy ass letter that they wrote. It looked like a 5-year-old wrote it, and they put anthrax on it and mailed it to, like, I think NBC News at Rockefeller Plaza, and they literally killed people. The same fucking media that covers for these assholes, they got murdered by them, like fucking idiots. But that's the world we live in. So they planted that anthrax seed, definitely from Fort Detrick, definitely an inside job, definitely a false flag, psyop. And then about a year later, SARS breaks out in China. Okay, possibly. Could be just a natural oopsie poopsie. It happens. It does happen. But that's mad sketchy because they were studying this virus just a few years before. It almost feels like, they started talking about biological terror right around the time 9/11 happened. They were really pushing the bioweapons thing then. I don't think a lot of people remember because 9/11 was such an event. It was like the biggest event in that entire decade. It was basically from 2001 to 2010. Everyone just talked about 9/11, and everyone forgot about anthrax. And I really think that first SARS might have been the big pandemic that they wanted, but it just didn't take off. It was a gnarly disease, but it wasn't nearly transmissible enough to spread, even though it did make its way all the way to Canada and other places, and a little bit in America, I guess, too. I don't know. That one's sketchy. That one in particular is very sketchy. MERS, I need to do more research on. I've heard a lot of rumblings that MERS is the next big breakout, and we had one in 2012. This one, and MERS kills a lot of people. Like, it's not super transmissible, but if you were to make it transmissible with gain of function research, this would be much worse than what we're facing right now. And I don't even want to think about that. That's fucking horrible. But of course, it's probably bats and then camels. We do know that camels gave people MERS. We don't know how the camels got the MERS. They always say it's from a bat. It's from a bat. It's from a bat. Eventually, this from a bat thing is getting ridiculous. Like, you can't just blame bats for everything that happens. Like, it's just absurd. And then Ebola, man. Ebola dates way back. People don't realize that Ebola, man, we found that decades and decades ago. It's been in bioweapons labs for decades and decades and decades. Ebola is not new at all. And we've researched the hell out of Ebola. And it is super, super deadly as well. It's just not very transmissible because it kills people so fast that they don't pass it along, and they say it's probably from bats, and then it probably goes to a monkey, then it probably goes to people. I don't know. And they're like, there's probably no asymptomatic infection. Why don't we know anything about Ebola? We've been studying it for decades and decades and decades. This is a bunch of bullshit. I don't know if I believe any of that. That's pretty wild. Amtrax is everywhere, Cadillac Jack says. White powder, baking powder could be Amtrax. Call 911. I mean, it's something. What is weird about Ebola? Check this out. In 2012, before the big Ebola outbreak, we had many before that, but the big one was 2014, right? There's a patent, another patent, these magical patents. Human Ebola virus species and compositions and methods thereof. Whoa, that's weird. Okay, October 4th, 2012. Who are the inventors? Oh, this dude from Atlanta, this dude from Atlanta, this dude from Atlanta, this dude from Atlanta. Wow, sounds like some CDC if I've ever heard it. Oh, yep, Department of Health. Look at that. They filed this in 2009, so this is well before that 2014 breakout. But the patent was in. The patent was in before the outbreak. I mean, that's convenient. That's convenient, right? But you know what? Ebola wasn't transmissible enough. You know, they couldn't really sell the vaccine, man. Couldn't sell the vaccine because people died fast and then it was over. I mean, 2 years is a long time, though. They have tried to make some Ebola vaccines. I don't know how good they are. But if you look at this, these are all apparently strains of Ebola. How crazy is that? There's well over 100 different strains of Ebola on here. And we can scroll down and skip all this. That's wild. Everybody hurts. So, and then this is the kicker here. The invention, they call this an invention, Ebola invention, because patents are supposed to be for inventions. The invention provides the isolated human Ebola, or Ebola, viruses denoted as Bundibugyo, or Ibobun, whatever that means, deposited with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Atlanta, Georgia, United States of America, on November 26, 2007, and accorded an accession number, blah, blah, blah. This deposit was not made to an international depository authority, IDA, as established under the Budapest Treaty on the international recognition of the deposit of microorganisms. So it's alive, something that's alive, for the purposes of patent procedure, and is a non-Budapest Treaty deposit. The deposited organism is not acceptable by American-type culture collection. Not acceptable. Okay, this is an American treaty, though, or an American patent. This is very bizarre. They're like, we made this deposit, and now we're throwing a patent on it. The background of the invention. And it has literally Ebola virus right here. The genus Ebola virus. 4 species from Zaire, Sudan, Reston, and Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. This is very weird, because no matter how you look at this is completely illegal. And I think what the CDC does is they literally patent things that are illegal, and they just pay a fee. They get charged some kind of fine or something, and they just pay it, and then everyone's kind of turns the other way, and they get to keep the patent. But it's really unclear as to what they patented here. These are just actual strains of Ebola collected in the wild, which is illegal because you're not allowed to patent naturally occurring viruses or organisms of any kind. You can't patent nature. And if it's not that, if it's actually a bioweapon, like some kind of lab Ebola, that's also illegal because you're not allowed to create bioweapons. There was an international treaty during the Nixon era, and it said you're not allowed to make these bioweapons. The United States is part of that treaty. We were part of that treaty with Russia and China and other countries that make bioweapons because we didn't want to, start a pandemic. But you know what? America is not going to follow that, of course. Why would they? It's America. What up, Misha? Hello, everyone. So we're just looking at some crazy stuff. So that's the good old Ebola patent that the CDC has. Because, of course, they have an Ebola patent that is completely illegal. So let's just patent Ebola and we can make money off of Ebola. So that means the CDC wants Ebola to spread if they're making a patent. And they always say, oh, well, we do this so we can get ahead of the game and we can get a virus so we can help people. I was called bullshit on that because this is an illegal patent to begin with. So go fuck yourself. All right. So Ebola, to 2016 in Guinea. There have been many Ebola outbreaks. Hard to tell what are natural, what are not at this point. It's just really that messy. And then COVID-19. COVID-19, we don't know. It's unknown. And yes, there's asymptomatic infection. If you say so. All right. So, very interesting. Extensive wildlife and livestock farming, wildlife trafficking, and live animal markets in China. They really want to blame China for this. I like that. Academic literature has revealed Wuhan market sold live mammals and dozens of species, including raccoon dogs, mass palm civets, and a variety of other mammals, birds, and reptiles, often in poor conditions where viruses can jump among species, facilitating recombination events and the acquisition of novel mutations. We really like that novel thing. I mean, we first, we're studying coronavirus back in 1999, right? So was that first SARS an actual novel virus, or had we discovered it already and patented technology surrounding it? Is SARS-CoV-2 actually novel, or is it part of the first SARS? Is it literally a lab creation from that first SARS? We don't even know. We don't know. That's why we have documents like this, which are like, we don't know. It's unknown. Ugh. SARS-CoV-2 can infect a range of mammals, including cats, dogs, pangolins, binks, raccoon dogs, and a variety of wild and domestic animals, according to academic literature. The perfect bioweapon. The perfect bioweapon is transmissible, virulent enough to cause fear, not so virulent that all the billionaires die and they hate themselves for coming up with such a crazy idea to begin with. And there are animal reservoirs, so it's this nagging fucking thing that never goes away. It's the perfect bioweapon. Wider Hubei province has extensive farming and breeding of animals that are susceptible to SARS-CoV-2. Hubei province is the province in which Wuhan is a part of, including minks and raccoon dogs. Blah, 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 blah. Yunnan is where a lot of those bats come from. We know, blah, blah, blah. The case for the laboratory, and they're really pushing the lab thing, even though they haven't proven anything. They've been proven that it actually came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Yes, they were doing gain-of-function research. No, they don't talk about it in this document. But that makes them the perfect patsy. That makes them the perfect fall guy, basically, for this whole pandemic, right? You outsource your gain-of-function research, which was going on in America until 2014. Obama was like, that's too dangerous. What he really meant is we're going to get blamed for this shit if we don't move this shit across the world. So they moved this shit in 2014 over to China, gave them plenty of time to set up this next pandemic. And then literally Bill Gates, Dr. Fauci, Peter Daszak, which is the guy that writes the grants for, the checks for the gain-of-function research. They all predicted publicly, they openly predicted a pandemic. Come on, guys. It's a little bit absurd. And there were a million simulations that they were all a part of. And it's just, it got ridiculous. These guys did all this predictive programming, basically. They're manufacturing consent, man. They're manufacturing your consent. They're doing predictive programming. All the tricks in the book. We've seen these tricks over and over and over again, but people never seem to get it. Yada, yada, yada. Blah, 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 blah. Biosafety conditions for specific work could have led to incident. Yes, biosafety. There are leaks in these Chinese labs. That is a point of concern. That is a legit concern. But these also happen in America. Fort Detrick, where anthrax from 2001 came from. They like to blame the Middle East on for that, but that was definitely from Fort Detrick. That biolab shut down in the summer of 2019, just a handful of months before the pandemic officially started. So we have leaks all the time too. Fort Detrick has had many leaks, and it's one of probably the most dangerous lab in the whole world, because every crazy thing has happened at Fort Detrick over many years. That was around during World War II. So it's easy to blame China because of safety practices, but America's not much better at the safety, really not. And then they even have the Hunan seafood market, which they tested all the animals. None of the animals, not one animal had, well, from what they could tell, because you can't really tell with testing, but you get an idea. But none of these animals seem to have the virus. Yet humans at the market did. So it wasn't jumping to animals as much as they thought it was, I guess. And they really think China being more transparent is the key to determining COVID-19 origin. So they're assuming guilt by China, or assuming that it comes from China. They're saying China's transparency is how we determine the origin, when the origin doesn't have to be from China at all. It doesn't have to be from China. We have blood samples and sewage samples and a lot of case studies basically showing that like this virus was circulating at the same time in Italy, France, America, and probably other places. 2019 wasn't just circulating in China in late 2019. It was circulating in other countries. So I don't know what that's a pretty big statement. It's a pretty bold statement to say that China is the key. I don't know that that's true. I mean, it could be, but it's a ridiculous assumption. Wuhan Institute of Virology's public available coronavirus research. They talk about, the most the closest virus that we found is this particular one. Could be the one that was used to make SARS-CoV-2. It is very close. But they also found out that the original SARS outbreak was very close. Had part of it was very close to HIV-1. That's very interesting. Does that suggest, a lab experiment or something? HIV-1 kind of showing up in the first SARS. A piece of it was very similar to HIV, but also HIV has thousands and thousands of different variants because that's a whole mess. The whole HIV/AIDS thing is so messy. The more you read about it, the more you're like, oh my God, it's so bad. Who knows? And they say that, because it has that SARS virus had HIV, part of it was similar to HIV, that it allowed SARS, I guess, to enter cells of people who were infected by HIV even more. So it's as if they're already targeting those people who are already sick. If this was a lab thing, I don't know. That's maybe a little speculation on my part. That's weird. But that there was a whole study on that, how SARS and HIV there's similarities. It's crazy to me. Abnormal activity. There's abnormal activity in Fort Detrick. So I don't know. Wuhan had it. Wuhan had abnormal activity the same exact time Fort Detrick had abnormal activity. It's just these aren't strong. They made this whole document, and a lot of this is not strong whatsoever. Since September 2020, a virologist who worked in a WHO-affiliated laboratory in Hong Kong has publicly stated that Beijing created SARS-CoV-2 from bat coronaviruses, and that China's researchers intentionally released it. The scientific community did not peer review these articles, and some publicly rejected the article's claims as scientifically unsound. Not that peer review means anything anymore. People are so paid off to peer review things that they literally take money and they're like, yeah, my friend wrote that. And they literally don't review it. We know that after last year, where things were actually redacted because people who were supposed to be reviewing it, their names were on the damn study. They didn't even look at the shit, or they didn't even have complete data sets. So they were like, yeah, the data looks good from what I can tell. They didn't know what they were even saying yes to. So peer review, it's not as good as people think. An intentional, I don't know, if you're going to do an intentional release, I don't know. I don't think you would make something in a lab and be like, all right, my neighbors, here's coronavirus. I don't think you would do that, because clearly you'd look guilty. You would go somewhere else and release it. Duh. But okay, it's a pretty bizarre theory. I don't think so. Intentionally releasing it on your own people when they know you make the virus, when there's a paper trail. I don't know. Theory that SARS-CoV-2 originated outside China. Now, this is what I'm talking about. We are aware of scientific studies claiming to have found SARS-CoV-2 viral fragments or antibodies in samples taken before November 2019 outside China. However, technical flaws. Not technical flaws. In some of these studies, uncertainties in the methodologies. What methodologies are different? And in some cases, the lack of a credible review process make us skeptical of their utility in determining the pandemic's origin. There's so many different ones. Which ones are you talking about? We assessed that the first cluster of confirmed COVID-19 cases arose in Wuhan, China. That's funny. And they're still going with this whole, the first case in America was late January. It was someone who flew in to Seattle from Wuhan. And we definitely know people were, COVID positive way before that in America. So they're really just sticking with the China narrative. That's ridiculous. We know that people were sick. A lot of people were sick before late January in America. Like CES, I believe it's called, is the big tech convention in Las Vegas every year. And that was like earlier mid-January. And that was supposed to be a super spreader event because everyone got sick with this respiratory thing and they didn't know what it was. And it was probably COVID. And we had the American Red Cross or the blood bank or whatever. They had samples of blood in December that were already showing antibodies. Like 11% of this group of blood samples and that were taken across the country from coast to coast came up positive with antibodies. Not every antibodies test is accurate. Sometimes the antibodies test will come up positive, but it's like other antibodies for a similar thing, I guess. But 11%, come on, that's a lot. I don't know. What else? We continue to monitor scientific publications. They don't even talk about these other theories. They gave it like a half a page, not even. See, that's bullshit. They spend pages and pages kind of generally talking about Wuhan, and we just don't have enough information, and this could come from bats and all this stuff, and they bullshit the China excuse, and then theory that SARS-CoV-2 originated outside of China. Technical flaws. Technical flaws? About which you don't even name the studies or the theories or any of it. Like, what are you talking about? There's several in Italy, France, America. What are you talking about? This is crazy. Like, this document sucks. This makes them look guilty, actually. That part reads red flag for me. Which part? Exactly. Because this whole thing reads red flag to me. This reads cover up to me. This screams cover up, in my opinion. I mean, this just feels like one cover up piece, just a BS piece. Annex C, intelligence community approach to a 90-day study. Oh, God. The NIC collaborated closely with the National Counter-Proliferation Center, NCPC, the National Intelligence Management Council. What are all these organizations? This is crazy. And IMC, IC agencies, and other USG entities and departments on this assessment. The IC kicked off a 90-day study by outlining the core intelligence questions that would be addressed over lines of effort, collection, and analysis. These questions included, these important questions, because we're so smart. We ask these important questions. Did the outbreak begin through contact with the infected domestic or wild animals, or was it the result of a laboratory-associated incident? Or was it a deliberate release? That's the thing. There were several documents in the past decade that discussed, sometimes at length, deliberate release of biological weapons. Like, I'm telling you, like, as soon as they started ramping up the simulations and the pandemic preparedness and all that BS, they were talking about deliberate release. Sometimes it was at the very bottom of these huge documents, but it was in there, and it was pages long oftentimes. Deliberate release. They planted that seed. Many government documents. Also, NGOs were talking about it. Government organizations that oftentimes work with the government. Like, they were talking about deliberate release. Now they don't want to talk about deliberate release. That's bullshit. You don't get to talk about deliberate release for years and years and years and then say this is not a deliberate release, possibly. That's insane. That they're just kind of like, nah, no way. Nah. I don't believe it. Was the virus genetically engineered? They ask it, but they say no immediately. Is SARS-CoV-2 a biological weapon? They say no immediately. They don't have a good excuse. They don't really explain in full why they say no. That's BS to me. That's BS. Oh, they do this. Before the start of drafting, the NIC hosted an IC-wide Team A, Team B Don't you love how they do these exercises and simulations like it's like a class project? They're like, all right, team A, you go over here and do this. Team B, you go over here and do this. Now come up with a bullshit excuse that makes China look bad. Go. It's like, are you kidding me? This is what the intelligence community does. They break up into team A and team B, and they do like little group activities. Get the fuck out of here. Fuck you guys. Don't believe this shit. I mean, they might do that so they can write these documents. It's like, well, we have to come up with a fake document. I guess we should, collaborate. Let's break up into groups and make up scenarios. Oh my God. Emphasize points of agreement, provide additional, this is all bullshit. Intelligence jargon. Provide additional definitions in the lexicon and ensure technical or intelligence jargon is explicitly explained. Yeah, explain your jargon. All right, we're almost to the bottom here. Answers to the following questions would help us better evaluate hypotheses related to the origins of COVID-19. So, yeah, this is these questions are the ones we have to answer now for our next bullshit document. What additional information, to include timing, location, relevant animal exposures, occupational information, and clinical samples, is there on the earliest cases of COVID-19? How are early cases investigated? Were they really investigated or were they covered up? What questions or tools were utilized for tracing contacts and contacts of those contacts? Oh, did we do contact tracing right? If not, what can we do better? Should we do mass surveillance even harder? Should we surveil the fuck out of these people? Should we put them in digital prison with universal digital identity? Boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy, this is going to get bad. What direct or indirect indicators of COVID-19 clusters is China aware of from early in the outbreak? It's China's fault. This may include things like hospital occupancy rates or efforts to triage medical care outside the hospital facilities. China was never as bad as we were, so kiss my ass. What insight can China provide on the search for the reservoir and potential intermediate species of COVID-19 virus? This is literally like finding a needle in a haystack. Oh my God, we got to go find the bat that fucking shit in the mouth of a pangolin that fucking farted on a worker at a wet market. This is ridiculous. This is the biggest like goose chase I've ever seen. Like, and that's what makes a bioweapon the perfect thing to kill some people, to restructure society, to like extract profits from people, to control people, like everything you can do with a bioweapon, an invisible killer. It is genius. It really is. What insight can China provide on the search for the identification of a progenitor virus? Have any leading candidates or regions for spillover been identified? What information, data, and or samples does China have on wildlife or other animals present in the following markets in Wuhan? The Huanan seafood, and there's a bunch of markets they name because let's just name markets in China because that has nothing to do with anything. They already tested all of the animals from the Huanan seafood market in Wuhan. Not a single one of them appeared to be sick. But a lot of humans at that market were. So why are we talking about other animal markets that have nothing to do with this? That's BS. What information, data, or samples does China have on wildlife present in other markets, wildlife rescue centers, and or farms in Wuhan, across Hubei and neighboring provinces, or in locations where live animals in Hubei province are sourced from? That's better, but I mean, we're going cave diving, we're going to South China, to the caves to find the bats, and I don't know, man. This seems ridiculous. Oh, so that's the document. This whole thing is pathetically vague. Yeah. Hey, Tasha, what's up? It is pathetically vague. That's perfect because they don't even with their theories that they're getting behind, they're not even really supporting it with a good bullshit. It's like, China has they're messy. They're not good with communicating. They don't always wash their hands. Okay, guys, what? This is not evidence. You're just making shit up about China, dependent on China. This is that makes me think that the United States released it in Wuhan, but it was already circulating in other countries. I don't know. Like, it's weird. I really want to know how this was. I really do believe it was a deliberate release. I just don't know how it was done. I really want to figure it out. I really do, because it was circulating in other countries. And they know that too, because we know that. And they sit there and say, oh, well, they're technical data, blah, blah, blah. No. You don't get to do that. Like it doesn't fly into America in Seattle at the end of January, and then by March, everyone has it. Like, literally, Alaska has it, Hawaii has it. That's not how that works. It doesn't just float across the ocean to Hawaii. No. It's a lot of traveling. It takes months and months and months before it's in every corner of a massive country. I don't care how transmissible it is. It's not going to get to Hawaii and Alaska in like 2 months, all over the place. No way. So that's crazy. And I have one more thing I want to share. We can end on this. Look at this Twitter account. So this guy, Kevin J. Olival, his Twitter handle is NYCBat. NYCBat. He's in my city, of course, because that's where EcoHealth Alliance has their main office. He is a VP at EcoHealth Alliance. He works with Peter Daszak, who's the president who predicted a pandemic a couple years ago, who works with bats in Wuhan. Kevin has also worked in Wuhan. They also fund with grants the gain-of-function research in Wuhan. There was an exhibit in 2018 that opened up by the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian had this huge outbreak exhibit. They're like making outbreaks like pop culture. Funny thing is, a year and a half later, COVID. So here he is promoting the outbreak exhibit. And these tweets are just hilarious to me now, looking back. This hashtag outbreak exhibit couldn't be more timely with Ebola currently in DRC. That's the Congo. And Nipah in southern India. Thanks for educating the public about these critical issues. Oh, yeah, of course. The 2014 Ebola outbreak was traced to a single spillover event in rural Guinea. From there, the virus infected people from village to village across national borders into Sierra Leone and Liberia. Once the virus hit crowded urban areas, it spread quickly. Okay. Weirdo. Hanging with the bats at the Smithsonian's outbreak exhibit. Nice to see the conservation messaging in the display. Yeah. There's bats hanging from the ceiling. A little virus on the ceiling. Okay, yeah, there it is. And One Health I think it says One Health on the wall. That's one of their little, it says hashtag One Health. That's like their thing. One Health. It gets weirder, guys. Hashtag outbreak exhibit opening ceremony tonight with John Epstein. Spectacular event and crowd. Outbreak. And it's a fucking virus with spike proteins. What the hell is going on? They make it like a cool thing. Like, oh, outbreaks are cool. They literally kill everyone. Okay. That's just so weird to me. Dr. Fauci from the NIH and Dr. Epstein from EcoHealth Alliance comment on the new Smithsonian outbreak exhibit. Got to read that at some point. Are you ready for outbreak? EcoHealth NYC has teamed up with the Smithsonian exhibit. Okay, yep. So you're teamed up with them. Life goals, wearing a mask, of course. 2 years later. Ooh, this is the weirdest one, though. Yum. Civets and dried bat wings on the menu. This is for illustrative purposes only. A hypothetical menu. At the actual Smithsonian outbreak exhibit, they fucking put a menu of shit that can give you viruses. And they put the, what was that, Chinese translation? Is this not predictive programming? Is this not like Like what? This picture right here. Are you kidding me? Oh, let's just blame China. Let's just blame China for shit. The chickens from China. We have chickens here in America that carry disease, but let's just blame China. Put a little symbol next to it. Rabbits, ducks. Oh my god. Oh my god. That is ridiculous. And that's where I end it. That's where I end this. Holy crap. Technical flaws and whatever. Like you said, it pretty much convinces me it originated outside of China. Right. They literally throw in the outside of China thing in there, and then they don't go into it at all. They're just like, technical flaws. It's almost like admitting it is from outside of China. It's like you said it because you had to say it because people are making legitimate arguments, but then you don't go into it at all. Makes me think like you're just, sidestepping it because that's where the truth lies. That's what I'm getting from that. And yes, I'm biased and I have my own theories and whatnot, but like that document sucks. And that's what like you have you talk about technical flaws and you don't even show it or explain it or cite anything. That's crazy to me. How you can just sidestep it. If this was some random person on Twitter, everyone would be like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. But that's the actual intelligence community saying that. And they're not getting railed by normal people. So funny how we live in like backwards world. This whole thing is pathetically vague. Wow. Yeah, I agree. Very, 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 very vague. And we were, making menus. Disease outbreak menus, and we're putting them at the Smithsonian for all to see. Like if you were like a Chinese tourist and you saw that, wouldn't you be like, damn, that's weird? I'd be fucking offended. You're at the outbreak exhibit at the Smithsonian, and this is what you see if you're a tourist. Chinese shit. And you're like, wait, what? I don't know, man. That's weird to me. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. That's bizarre. That is bizarre. Oh, well, thank you for joining me tonight. That's really it. That's really all I had. I just wanted to go through that document because it was, recently declassified and released. I don't know what it's declassified from. It's not really an important document, but we live in one giant psyop. I feel like everything's a psyop now. I feel like psyops. I mean, psyops have been around for many, many years. Obviously, the intelligence community has been doing psyops since they were founded. But I feel like they must be more common now than they ever were. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me. Yeah, everything feels like a psyop. Everything feels like a psyop. And they're just planting the seeds. The more they plant these seeds, the more it's like, I know what's coming. And then, I don't know, they have these PR guys. They have the Faucis and the Gates, and they're just the PR guys. There's a lot of people making decisions behind those guys, right? Who are they? I mean, we know some of them maybe, but not all of them probably. And thank you. And they keep telling us that, they're telling us climate change. And yes, climate change is an issue, and they've known about it for decades now. But also a lot of the climate stuff is weather stuff like that they're calling climate change, which is not necessarily climate change. It's weather. Weather and climate are related, but not the same thing. And they can literally alter weather patterns. They can create rain. We've known this. They did it in the Vietnam War, which was before I was born, right? They literally made it rain in Vietnam. You can look this shit up. It was a military operation where they made it rain. They caused mudslides. It wiped out little villages. If they can make it rain, why can't they make it rain over the giant fires in California? Did they start the fires in California? They have directed energy weapons. Literally, they can zap you with a beam. They have that as a defense tool now. We've seen the military test it on humans at low frequencies where they zap you with an invisible beam, and it makes you kind of feel like your skin's burning or something, and you jump back because it hurts. But they can do that at a much greater scale. So are they starting fires with that and saying, oh, climate change? We don't know. That's the kind of weird world we live in. And we're going to start seeing like more. I mean, we're seeing flooding like crazy. We're seeing weird weather patterns. We're seeing temperatures wonky. You know, the rain's wonky. We have storms in places that aren't usually that rainy. Who knows what's caused by humans and what's natural? Who knows? I can't even keep up anymore. I'm trying, but it's so hard. And if you like question any of it, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. But like we know that they can mess with a lot of this stuff. I am connected. No, I'm not. And another one is cyber attacks. They keep talking about, oh, we're behind in the AI race and China's ahead. And if they're ahead in the AI race, they're going to be able to hack us and blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, we're giving all of our best technology to Israel. They have like the back door to a lot of our stuff. They're our ally, but like they get everything for free. I don't know, man. Something weird is happening with Israel. I have to do more research on that, but they have so much. We give them money for weapons. We give them our weapons. We give them top military technology, but they also have a lot of they have back doors to everything in America. You know, like Microsoft has a huge research and development building out there in Israel. Intel has offices, like literally, like I think like 7 or 8 of the biggest tech companies have offices there that do important work. Not just like, oh, we have offices, you know, for, you know, customer service. No, they're like doing actual research and development. It's very weird how much stuff gets brought over to Israel. And all the tech companies in Israel are full of intelligence and spies and stuff like that. So who knows? There seems to be this kind of, you know, the whole global government thing is not crazy because they used the idea of a global pandemic for, you know, and you see this in a lot of these documents where they talk about deliberate release or, you know, the next pandemic, because a lot of these documents were released in the last 10 years to kind of prep us for this moment, it seems like. And they talked about how it's going to take a global effort, global leadership to take care of a global pandemic. And this is their words. I'm not making this shit up. I'm not like, this is not tinfoil stuff, man. They were literally talking about how the globe needs to come together. There needs to be global leadership to take care of a global pandemic. And this is in those documents. Some of them are from government agencies. And it's like they're kind of doing that predictive programming thing where they're like, oh, the empire is moving from America to the globe, like the UN might be the headquarters. Israel might be the new headquarters in a weird way. They're vaccinating the hell out of their people. I don't know what the hell's going on. I feel like they're going to OD those people. Four shots in a year. Like I don't even understand. Like, get your shots if you're at risk and you need it and you think you need it. You know, I'm not going to judge you for it too hard. But like, there's something weird going on. There's something weird, and I don't have all the pieces of the puzzle yet. I don't think most people do, but I don't like it. There's something bizarre. Israel's a part of it in a way that I don't understand yet, and I have to do a lot more research on the Israel part, because they seem to be the centerpiece of everything. The thing is, Israel has a tight relationship with America, and they get a lot of stuff from us. They give us very little. They control the region. They bomb the hell out of the Palestinians, which is fucking sad. And they kind of control that region. You know, these little proxy wars that we love. We love Saudi Arabia because they bomb, you know, the countries around them, and we get to go steal oil. It's fantastic for us. But our relationship with Israel is not like our relationship with Saudi Arabia. It's different. It really is. And Israel is also connected with Russia, really tight. A lot of the people who work in tech in Israel are recruits from Russia, because Russia has they don't innovate shit in Russia. Like Russians can't even build houses. Like No, they can't. I'm lying, but Russia doesn't have a good tech scene. So a lot of the talent, because it is a big country, there is a talent pool. A lot of them go to Israel. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of Russian talent in Israel. And then with China, Israel has a tight relationship with China too. Israel is the country that has a tight relationship with all the big powers. It's very weird. It's very strange. The UK, also, kind of all the allies of America are really protective over the Zionist thing in Israel. There's something happening, and I will probably do something on that later. But yeah, all right, I'm ranting too long. Let's read some comments before we wrap this up, I guess. Oh, peace, Misha. Oh wait, but you typed more. I think they did something to cause that giant volcano. Oh, the volcano La Palma in the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa, a Spanish island. Yeah, the volcano has been going like crazy. Its black smoke is coming out like crazy. People are comparing it to Mount St. Helens. There's been like a lot, like tens of thousands of like tremors and earthquakes come underneath this volcano. But also, like, when you look at, there's a website that shows you all the tremors and earthquakes around the world, and they do happen in clusters, especially along fault lines, obviously. And if you go around the world and look at the clusters of tremors and earthquakes, you see these kind of random patterns because they're random quakes and tremors. But when you go to La Palma, this little island, which it's not super little, it's bigger than Manhattan, the island I live on, but you zoom in on the volcano and the tremors show up. And I don't know if this is just how, maybe it's the technology used in this part of the world, but only in this part of the world do you see the cluster of earthquakes and tremors happening in a grid pattern, like a perfect grid pattern with columns and rows. And it's been quaking like crazy for weeks and weeks now. And they're saying, like, if, this volcano caused a piece of the island to break off and fall into the water, it would cause a tsunami that would come all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, because it faces, the part that they're saying would collapse, faces North and South America and the Caribbean islands, and it would wipe out the islands. It would, like, those poor islands, as if they're not getting constantly hit by hurricanes and whatnot. So the Caribbean would be wiped out. If you live along the southeast coast of America, you'd be wiped out. The Gulf of Mexico, that area would get wiped out, along the coastline at least. Maybe northeastern Brazil would get wiped. And maybe even New York, where I live, would get wiped out by a tsunami. Who knows how big that tsunami would be exactly. Depends on how big that piece would fall into the water. They're saying a piece the size of Manhattan, which is like I don't even know how many miles Manhattan is, 13 miles or something, the island I live on, could fall. And it would cause a major tsunami that would take just 9 hours to go across the Atlantic Ocean. So there would be very little time to really get everyone to safety. And no one's really talking about it. I mean, there's been some mainstream reporting, but not a lot of it. Not that I've seen, at least. That is crazy. But La Palma volcano there's something going on there. I mean, if it's natural, but it's wild. Ricky needs to stream more often. Oh, thank you so much. Definitely something sus about the whole situation. I agree. I really hope that volcano does not collapse. That's going to ruin everything. People cannot handle another big event. But yeah, we have climate change, which they're going to blame the volcano on climate change, which that doesn't even make any sense. But carbon emissions made a volcano explode. That, I'm sure they'll use that excuse. That's absolutely crazy. But yeah, they're going to create some more climate catastrophes, and they're going to create a cyber attack because they've been warning us, oh, there's going to be a cyber attack. We're so far behind now. All of a sudden, we were like the tech leaders, and then we gave all of our tech away, and now we're behind in tech. It's almost like they're self-sabotaging. America, because maybe they are going for that global empire where they no longer care about borders. They no longer care about the country. They're like, why the hell? Why are we sitting here pretending to make rules for America when we ruin the whole planet anyways? I almost feel like they're just going to like move it to a global, government. They can't. Thing is, they can't move to a global government yet because basically, like presidents of smaller countries are like regional managers. Like if you think about it in like corporate sense, right? And all these corporate managers have been managing the whole pandemic, right? A lot of them have there's been multiple African leaders that have died during this pandemic. Some have been murdered. It's hard to tell who was murdered and who was actually sick, but a lot of African leaders died. And one of them mocked the whole PCR test thing, literally swabbed like fruits and birds and shit. And like some of the PCR tests came back positive from like random things that they swabbed. He mocked the whole pandemic, and that guy died in his like 50s, I think. And they say he died of like, coronavirus or pneumonia or some bullshit. But like, did he really? Or was he not going along with the plan? And I've heard rumors that one country, like the leader of one country, said that he was bribed early on in the pandemic. They were going to pay him like hundreds of thousands of dollars to push the propaganda. And I don't know if that's true. I have to do more research on that. But like something does feel off. It feels like all these countries were playing a role. And like the test kits for coronavirus, they started importing those in 2017. I mean, we have the proof, the orders. The 19th most imported thing into America in 2017 were these test kits, which were later the COVID-19 test kits. $7.7 billion worth in 2017. We were stockpiling that shit and acted like we had to rush order it. And then all of a sudden it's everywhere. Like PCR tests are everywhere. You don't hear about any like shortage of PCR tests now because they were stockpiling this shit. And they were acting like, oh, we have to go get these tests they already had. That's what the evidence shows, is that we had ordered these things well in advance. And many countries had. So many countries were told to or were in on it or something. Like something's very fishy. The more evidence I dig up, the more it's like, are you kidding me? At a certain point, when there's too many coincidences, nah, I'm not buying it anymore. Obviously correlation is not causation. Coincidences don't prove anything. It's not, it's not hard evidence. But like, it gets to the point where like a couple of coincidences, it's it's improbable, but it could still happen. When you have so many coincidences, like dozens and dozens and dozens, no way. The odds are impossible. The odds are 1 in a trillion. I'm not buying it. I'm just not buying it anymore. I should start a regular Friday night stream because I have no life. I have no social life. I'm not going to go out and party. I'm going to get on the YouTube with people who don't want to go out. And who wants to go out these days, though? I don't want to deal with this shit anymore, man. Going out is not nearly as fun as it used to be. The clubs were already closing. Like the fun, dancey places were already kind of closing. It's bar culture in NYC now, which is fine. Sit around drinking, I guess. But like, maybe this is the spot. Maybe we can talk about conspiracies and climate and COVID and all this craziness on the internet. I don't know. Maybe we will make this a regular Friday night stream. Should we talk about anything else before I hop off? Before I go get ready for bed? What else can we talk about? Is there anything that's big right now that we should talk about this week, tonight? If you're listening still, I know there's some people watching. I don't know if you're going to type in the chat or not. Is there anything we have to talk about that's big news or relevant before I hop off? That's the question I'm going to throw out there. What is there? I might be one of the most informative people on the web. This is to grow more people. Oh, well, thank you. I'm one of the most informative. When I tell you I research this shit nonstop, I research this shit nonstop now. It's become my thing. It's become my thing. I am going to write a book about COVID. I'm going to write a book really pushing the deliberate release theory, the lab theory with deliberate release, the intentional release. And I'm going to do it, and I'm going to look at the historical precedent of the long history of biological weapons and these sketchy biological weapons labs all over the world. I'm going to take a look at some of these viruses that don't really appear to be naturally, of natural origin. That's sort of how I set it up. I have that first chapter. There's an intro, but there's going to be a first chapter that really explores the historical precedents of something like this. Then it explores the actual event itself, the simulations and documents leading up to coronavirus, the actual coronavirus itself, and all the moves that were made during the corona. This past 18 months, there's been a lot of sketchy shit happening, and I'm going to really extract the really interesting stories from that and put that, push that forward. And then at the end of that book, I'm gonna. This book has way too much in it, but I like the idea that it's gonna have too much in it. It's gonna kind of predict like what's the future and how is COVID going to be used to change the world and change the future of the world. Basically, I don't know. I'm still thinking about a lot of. There's so much information. I really want to make it a book that's really an interesting read. A lot of books. Most books, you take one specific topic and you really find so much information on one specific thing. You really extract that and expand that into a couple hundred pages worth of information on a very specific topic. I don't want to do a very specific thing. I want to do a super broad arc, a huge broad arc for COVID, and just really pull out all the most interesting things over a huge timeline. I think that is something people will be really interested in. It's like super cool fact, but piece it together and build an arc. To kind of tell that story over many years. I think that'll be more interesting for people because a lot of people have heard the theories, right? A lot of people that would be interested in reading a book like this would be like, oh, well, yeah, of course I know that Fauci funded this. And that would be mentioned, Fauci funding, or the NIH funding things via other organizations, lab experimentation and stuff like that. Not just gain of function, but other crazy shit. DARPA research and DRTA research or DTRA research, Defense Threat Reduction Agency research. There's a lot of research that goes to all kinds of bioweapons and the weaponizing of insects and all kinds of stuff. There's many documents, but I don't want to talk about stuff people already know too much. I want to go through history and pluck out all the relevant stuff that connects the dots and be super succinct, but really weave it correctly so it's not like a mess where there's just a bunch of information that feels unrelated and scattered. I don't know. I'm still working. I'm still just researching. I haven't even properly outlined it. It's only outlined in my head. I haven't even written it down yet because every time I turn around, I'm going down another rabbit hole of actual government documents and military documents and news reports and interviews and stuff like that. And it's like, oh my God, every time I turn around, there's a wealth of information that's connected. And the picture just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But I want to paint this. I want to do broad strokes. I want to show the zoom out of COVID because everyone's trying to be like, oh, let's write a book about the lab origin theory, a whole book about the lab origin. We just looked at this document tonight, which is pushing, a possible lab leak, but probably from a bat. And that document was 18 pages of fucking bullshit. Who wants to read a whole book about the lab leak theory? There's that chick from Harvard. Her name's Alina Chan or something like that. Sorry if I'm not getting your name right, but she wrote a whole book about her hypothesis about the origin of COVID, and she's not even certain. That's who wants to read a whole book about that? I don't. I'll read some articles on it. Great. I'll read her I'll read a synopsis of that book, but I don't want to read a whole book about your theory that you're not even sure about. That's boring. I really want to like a lot of information, because the more information that you can give people that's related to the topic, the more they can come up with a real theory for themselves, you know. And it might not be the same theory I have, and that's great. You know, maybe they have a better idea. I don't know. Get the book made and get on Tim Pool's podcast. Tim Pool is not even my favorite guy, but if he invited me on, I'd totally go. I'd totally go. So glad you're doing this, Ricky. Walk hard, my brother. Hey, thank you. I'm not sure I know who RW is, but I'm sure you're on the Twitter. Thank you for stopping by. You would school all the top podcasters on the. Did you really write coronavirus, and they would love it, and your book would get out there. Oh, thank you. Well, I have some friends in indie media that could help me get the book out there for sure. So, yeah. I know who I want to do the graphics for it. I know who I want to edit it. So, I got my team, man. So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, it's gonna be a wild book. I really want to get it out like early next year. It requires so much work. I think I'm gonna work less, like real like jobs, to pay the bills after this month, or after November. Sorry, it's October still. But I think I'm gonna pull back on work. I am trying to save some money right now so I can just coast through the winter. I think winter would be a really great time to knock out a book before people are tired of the topic. I mean, the book will be relevant now, but a few years later, people will start picking COVID back up after the COVID fatigue wears off, I think. But I want to get it out now while this kind of thing is still relevant, because I want people to know more about this mess. That people are still in denial that like anyone would release a virus. But when you know what I know, and what some of you people know, obviously, when you know what we know, like, yeah, of course they would release a virus. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars on the research. They spend billions of dollars on the labs. For what? You don't spend all this money on labs and research not to release a virus or do something crazy. I mean, they're not just creating cures. In fact, creating probably more viruses and weapons than they are cures. They still haven't cured cancer. They had a cancer program at Fort Detrick. Yes, when we said, hey, we're not making biological weapons anymore, they moved the National Cancer Institute, NCI, to Fort Detrick. The place that's supposed to cure cancer is at the place where they create all the bioweapons. Can you make that make sense? I can't. And then, around that same time, they created the Special Virus Cancer Program, SVCP. And that really, really, really looks like the blueprint for HIV/AIDS. And HPV, but HIV/AIDS. Yep. And there was a congressional hearing or some kind of hearing. I don't know if it was Congress, but it was a hearing, some government hearing in the 60s. And I have to go back and look at this again. I skimmed over it the other day. I just have had so much on my to-do list to study. But like this happened. And they basically asked this person who was probably part of US AMRID or Fort Detrick or whatever. They're like, or any of those organizations that's tied to bioweapons labs. I don't recall. I have to go back and look. But they basically asked them on record, like, you know, could you come up with like a cancer or a virus that could like kill people? And they're like, yeah, we could probably do that in like 10 years. What what? They literally asked that. That's on record. I have that transcript somewhere. That is a legit thing that happened. And it's like, you literally asked if you could come up with like some kind of like cancer virus or something, and like 10 years. I think that was like the mid or late 60s, and guess what? By late 70s, HIV/AIDS, baby. From chimpanzees in New York City. Are we sure? Are we sure? And then Dr. Fauci brought out the AZT. Lots of money was made with AZT. AZT was poison. Killed the virus, but it also killed the human. So people who took AZT, the drug that they authorized for emergency use, like remdesivir, caused organ failure, like remdesivir, and cost a lot of money, like remdesivir. It's like the same scam all over again. Only AZT is much worse than remdesivir. Remdesivir doesn't really have much clinical benefit to COVID-19. That studies come out. AZT literally causes multiple organ failure. It's poison. It's straight poison. It's sad. Because people who died from AZT appeared to be dying of AIDS because it causes some of the same symptoms. AIDS caused like pneumonia and Kaposi's what's it called? Kaposi sarcoma? Some kind of cancer. Kaposi sarcoma, I think it was. And AZT just, killed your lungs, killed everything, killed your organs. Disgusting. Bad news bears. You at school, the denial is real. Read government documents and be called a conspiracy. Right. That's the thing. When I'm saying the things I say, it's like I'm saying them because I read them in the damn government documents. They put it out there. And I don't know, sometimes I'm wondering, do they put that out there to throw you off? Because it's probably most of the secrets are in classified documents that you don't see. But every once in a while, you find a document that was declassified, and you're like, okay, well, maybe there's something here. Or something that was, planted because they're doing predictive programming. Or you see that they actually accidentally left something in there that they probably weren't supposed to leave in there every once in a while. Yeah. I've noticed Bill Gates does that a lot. He spills the beans a little bit because they use him as sort of a PR guy. A lot of people think he's the mastermind behind a lot of things. The more I've researched Bill Gates as of late, the more I think that he's not really the brains behind anything. Not even Microsoft. And that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down. But I don't think he's the brains of anything. I mean, he is smart. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, Bill Gates is smart. But the amount of time they spend on television telling you how smart Bill Gates is makes me think he's not quite as smart as they show him to be. If you look, there's a Netflix documentary, and they literally spend a good portion of this documentary explaining how smart Bill Gates, how much of a genius Bill Gates is. They literally, every chance they get, they tell you how smart and brilliant and successful he is. That's why he's such a, he's such a genius, and he's so rich. And if you have to tell me this over and over and over again, you're just brainwashing me into believing it. You're trying to brainwash me into believing it. No, I don't think Bill Gates is that smart. I mean, he's smart. Don't get me wrong. But it's a PR thing. It's definitely a PR thing with him. Because between him and Paul Allen, Paul Allen was the superior programmer from what it seems. Paul Allen got the higher SAT score, even though they got 1,600 and 1,590 supposedly. But Bill Gates had the connections. Bill Gates had an interesting family. His grandpa knew the mayor of Seattle. His dad was tight with the governor of Seattle. His parents played bridge with Warren Buffett. His mom introduced him to Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett was his mentor, at least for the last 30 years. A lot of the tech companies that came out of the 20th century have military ties, which is interesting. Like the tech boom was really weird. It's like these 16-year-old kid, like Bill Gates was like 16 years old when he was getting his first gig. There's ties to nuclear as well. Very interesting. The whole Gates arc doesn't make much sense. The timeline doesn't make much sense. They've scrubbed a lot of Bill Gates Sr. stuff. His dad was all over the place. His dad was a lawyer. He was senior partner at a law firm. He had clients that were in the tech world. That's how Bill Gates got connected to the tech world, because he knew his son wanted to be a programmer, yada, yada, yada. He hooked his son up with some early jobs, which is really interesting. There's a lot there. Maybe we'll go into Bill Gates more and show you that it's much bigger than Bill Gates. Bill Gates' father hooked him up with the jobs. Bill Gates' mother hooked him up with Warren Buffett. You know, when he was starting Microsoft, he dropped out of Harvard and was writing code and like somehow got a job in like, what was it, like Albuquerque or some shit. Like, it was too convenient. Paul Allen and Bill Gates both dropped out of college. One was at Washington State University, one was at Harvard, and they both dropped out of school. And Paul Allen went out to Boston to be with Bill Gates, his buddy Bill Gates. What? And Bill Gates got, I don't know who got him a job, but like Paul Allen got a job at Honeywell. And then while they were out there, they saw like this computer that was on a magazine cover, and they're like, "Oh, we want to write code for that." And they said that they were writing code on, like, and code was like punched into paper strips back then, and like very few people even had the resources to do this. And these like college dropouts were just writing code. It's like, okay, I mean, it's possible, I guess, that they're just geniuses, but like there were actual, like, you know, military, a lot of them, engineers, and these kids were like, well, we're going to punch some paper, we're going to bring it to you, and we try to get jobs. And they founded Microsoft. I don't know, man. I don't know if I buy it. I almost feel like there's a huge backstory there. And we'll get into that some other time. But I think that might be it for tonight, unless y'all have something else. This was fun. I've been rambling for the last 20 minutes, but I had to go through that document, which was complete BS. So the intelligence community is basically saying, it's China. We don't know why it's China, but it's China. They need to tell us more. They're being weird. They're not telling us any information. Until China, you know, stops being weird about this, then we won't know what's going on with COVID. We don't know where it comes from, what the origin is. I call bullshit. I don't believe that whatsoever. I don't believe it. Anything else before I run? Thank you for joining me here tonight on a Friday night talking about COVID. What a life. What a life. Well, thank you for joining me, everyone. It was great to see your names pop up in the chat. Always great, always fun. Have a good night, everyone. And I'll see you on the next. Thanks for stopping by.